Thermopolis, Wyoming lived through it all, and when Gene and I arrived, it was a quiet town of descendants of cattlemen and sheepmen and outlaws and oil workers. It was tough, political, and hard to live in. The bars were full of bitter, unemployed oil workers, and the ranches were being sold to corporations, and the cowboys were broke and trying to become cowboy poets. A few were great, most were awful. It was sad and depressing and one of the most beautiful places on earth. How people can be bitter, mean, hateful, and narrow minded and rude that live in a place as beautiful and awesome and creatively inspiring as Wyoming, I'll never understand. The few people who have money don't want tourism to come into their small towns and don't like out of state car tags. They close the restaurants and bars on the holidays. The hotels and campgrounds are full and the business owners close down and go on vacation. You would think they would take advantage of the fact that for a few months of good weather, they could make money so it would be easier to get through the winter. Oh well, that's the way it was in the early 90s, and I didn't have any idea. I just thought it was a beautiful, wonderful place to live in. As the real estate lady drove me around all around Thermopolis, I fell in love with the surrounding beauty of the snow-capped mountains 50 miles away and the open, rolling brown hills and prairie that enclosed the town. It was like listening to a perfect choir sing I Dream of Jeannie by Stephen Foster or a Philharmonic orchestra play Tumbling Tumbleweeds. The openness of the geography and the loneliness of the sheer power of the mountains. It makes you want to sit down and cry because man is so insignificant in this beauty. We are truly minuscule microbes wandering around on this incredible planet. Our stupidity will destroy the Eden we've been given to live in. The steam comes off the springs all day, and like Brigadoon, this sleepy valley of brown, tan, magenta, and purple, covered with a blue sky and buffalo clouds, lay waiting to be appreciated for more than the raping of man. We take for greed what belongs to all creatures, big or small. We drill holes and deface it because we see it as worthless. Painters cry for its inspiration. Poets cry for its ability to pull the emotions like a harpist plucks a melody of seasons. We need to be sent there for 1 year and forced to experience its awe-inspiring, breathtaking beauty while we sit and watch God get our total, undivided attention. Then we could go back to our lives of stress and turmoil with a renewed sense of love and praise for the world we live in. Amen. My brother David asked me what I learned from 32 years of traveling, and this is only one page of the life I've uncovered with my gift. At the end of this tour with Wyoming Real Estate, I was shown a house on Springview Lane, right across the street from the rodeo grounds. A tiny 3-bedroom modular home on a permanent foundation, fenced-in yard and front porch with an awning. It was old, but it was in perfect shape. The lady said the owners originally had it on the market for $20,000, but then dropped it to $15,000. I said I might have a buyer for $12,000, but no more. I called Debbie, and her banker said yes, and Debbie bought the house on Springview Lane in Thermopolis, Wyoming. Gene and I played for quite a few folks that Gary brought by, and people seemed to really like my style of music. I got hired to play for the Outlaw Trail Ride the next week. That would be for 100 riders who once a year rode the Outlaw Trail that goes from Thermopolis to the Hole in the Wall that Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and the Hole in the Wall gang would take each time the law came up the canyon to capture them. Gene and I drove up to meet them at one of their camps. It was a lot of fun and so beautiful you can't imagine. The sage and open prairie, rolling hills were a sight to behold. After the trail ride, we had enough money to go back to the East Coast. It was now August, and we'd been gone since April. I'd talked to Debbie and Jean, and I decided we would go back to Pennsylvania and load up and leave the next spring to move to Wyoming for good. All was well, and I was excited to move to Wyoming and sing out my life. No more big road for me, and no more East Coast crap. We loaded up and headed southeast to Casper and Ogallala, and then east across Nebraska and south to Missouri. Along the way, we pulled into an interstate rest area for the night. We parked, and Jean fixed dinner and coffee, and after dinner we cleaned up the dishes, and the old man decided to turn in so we could get an early start. I stayed up for a while. An hour or so later, I walked over to the restrooms, and when I came back, I folded up the camp chairs and stepped into the trailer, and the old man was sitting on the edge of his bunk and didn't look right. I said, "What's wrong?" He said, "I don't feel right." He was looking at his bad leg. A few years back, he had had a phlebitis ulcer removed from his left ankle. It was never healed right. While I was outside, a mosquito bit him on that ankle, and he sprayed Deep Woods off on it, and his leg had swollen and turned bright red from the knee down. His eyes were as big as silver dollars. His heart rate was sky high, and he felt like he was running a fever. I noticed red streaks running up his thigh, and I got scared. I said, "Hang on, Jean, I'll be right back." I ran across the parking lot to the payphone, and I called Debbie. When she picked up the receiver, I told her everything. She said, "Get a bucket of warm water with Epsom salts. Soak the leg and wash it gently every 30 minutes for the next couple of hours. If he starts to foam at the mouth or growl, jump out the door, close it, and run. Give him a couple of aspirin also." I said, "What's this foam at the mouth shit?" She said, "I'm a vet, John." I said, "What do I do if it gets worse?" She said, "Wait till morning. If it's not better then, I'd say get him to a hospital or shoot him." I couldn't believe I'd called a vet. Oh, well, I got a bucket of warm water and Epsom salts, put his leg in it, and gave him 2 aspirin. He was crazy all night, but the redness was not getting any worse. The swelling was pretty bad, but his fever was down. I got him up and put him in the bed in the van and took off for Jackson, Missouri. He slept and sweated and moaned, and I drove that old van and trailer through Missouri as fast as I could toward Mother's house. We camped that night in a state park, and he felt a little better. We had no insurance and very little money, so I didn't want to put him in a hospital somewhere where we didn't know anyone. The next day we pulled into my mother's, and she had some heavy antibiotics, and I fed Jean and gave him the pills, and he got a little better. The following morning he was even better. The swelling was not so bad, but the skin from the knee down was dry and red and started to peel like a bad blistered sunburn. We talked, and he said, "Let's go on." I called Mitch Barrett in Berea, Kentucky. He said, "Come to Berea and we'll get him some of Granny's phlebitis medicine. Here's a place here you can sing, and that will get you some more road money." I said, "All right." On the way across Kentucky, Jean got worse, and I said, "Do you want to pull into a hospital or go on?" He said, "Go on to Mitchell's." I told him if he didn't get better, I guess I could just cut his leg off. He laughed, and I drove like the wind. When we got to Berea, Mitch and his mother got him phlebitis antibiotics, and Mitchell's mother bathed his leg with warm water and gold dial soap. The swelling went down in a couple of days. The leg peeled, and the color started going from red to pink. He was going to be all right until we could get him to Debbie's farm.